This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
This episode is brought to you by NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV. Catch every moment of your team's playoff push with NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV. You'll get amazing features like multi-view, and right now, it's only $49 for the rest of the NFL regular season. So give yourself the ultimate gift this holiday season. Get NFL Sunday Ticket for $49. Sign up now at youtube.com/Sunday Ticket. Device and content restrictions apply. Local and national games on YouTube TV. NFL Sunday Ticket for out-of-market games excludes digital-only games.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Big Ten Football Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Guggenheim. We are going to be talking about the bowl games. I'm going to give some thoughts on the bowl games. Merry Christmas Eve as well. I'm actually recording it on Christmas Eve morning, and it's coming out later this morning. So I want to just say Merry Christmas to you all now. I hope if you are listening to this on Christmas Day, turn this off and go spend time with your family. Go spend time reflecting on the grace of God and his grace for us in Jesus Christ. I know not everyone here is a Christian, so I understand that, but you guys know who I am. You guys know that's where I what I believe and where I lean. So I'm going to wish that for you as well, that you would experience the grace of God in your lives today as you reflect on that. But turn this off if it's Christmas Day. You don't need to be listening to me on Christmas Day. Go spend time with your families. But if it's not Christmas Day, I hope you guys are getting ready for bowl games and for other things in the Big Ten as we talk about bowl games. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe, and make sure to check us out on the Big Ten Huddle as well with my man JR as well. Big things happening over there. As the new year comes, I'm going to give you some updates on what's going to happen here as well. So that being said, this is going to be a quicker episode, but I do want to give some context. So there's 7 or 8 bowl games that the Big Ten is featured in, and I want to be clear. I'm not going to give scores necessarily. I'm just going to give you some ideas on what to expect. And with that, I want to kind of give a big asterisk as I prepare you for these bowl games, because if we've learned anything over the past several years with bowl games, anything can happen both in the reality of the transfer portal, NFL draft declarations, and what that means is anything that I say about players or about mood or anything like that can change on a whim, because people can choose not to declare until like 5 minutes before the game or opt out before 5 minutes before the game. And so some of these games, we know a lot of information ahead of time, like USC, Texas A&M. We know that like everybody and their brother has opted out of the USC, right? Like the Branch brothers are out. Bear Alexander's out. We've known that. We know that. Quentin Joyner, Deuce Robinson, like all those guys, we know they're out. But then you have Rutgers and you have guys like Kyle Monangai who are saying, maybe we'll play, and Tyreen Powell, maybe we'll play. But you really don't have a good read. Although I'm reading information that Monangai has been not in pads, been more of a coach. That gives you a little bit more insight that Monangai is probably not going to play. So I'm not gonna sit here and say, hey, this is exactly what's going to happen. But the reality is, in the playoff era, and really this era of kind of player safety, player protection, and not just protection from a health standpoint, but protection from a draft stock standpoint. We just don't know. And so a lot of what I'm going to tell you here is more kind of feel and more what I'm expecting based on rosters, but based on teams. And because of that, I just want to give you some insight here. A lot of people will try to tell you that bowl games are a measurement of how good a team has been over the year. And I think that might have been true 10, 12, 14 years ago. That is not true now. I think the playoff is a better metric for that, right? I think the playoff is going to tell us a little bit more about leagues because you're going to see the best of the best and you're going to see them at full strength. I think we saw a little bit of that with the Big Ten SEC, with Ohio State, Notre Dame. I think we saw that a little bit with the ACC, with Clemson and SMU taking on Penn State, taking on Texas and Penn State respectively. And I think we're going to see that with Arizona State taking on Texas. Like I think we're going to see a little bit more of the Big 12's, like how good was the Big 12 really? I think Texas is probably going to crush Arizona State because I don't think the Big 12 was very good. I think the SEC, as much as we malign them on this show, the SEC is really good. I don't think they're dominant like some people at the Four Letter Network want you to believe, but they are really good. And the Big Ten is really good, despite what the Four Letter Network wants to tell you about Indiana. So all that being said, I want to just give a little bit of context for each of these games and what to expect. So we're going to go through it. I'm going to start Thursday, December 26th. We have Rutgers taking on Kansas State in the Rate Bowl. It used to be the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. I don't know why they dropped the guaranteed, but okay, whatever. This is taking place Phoenix, Arizona. It's a 5:30 kick on ESPN. Kansas State, a 6.5 point favorite. Again, I'm expecting that Monangai will be out, but I do think Powell and Lewis, I think those guys, it looks like they're going to play. They were in pads for warm-ups and practice, so I would expect that they play. Other than that, like, there's not a ton of big names that are out. Wesley Bailey out for transfer portal. You have a lot of guys out for Kansas State, a lot of transfers for them as well. Avery Johnson obviously expected to play at quarterback for them. And then Kaliak Manis and all those boys expected to play for Rutgers. I really do like Rutgers and just the way that they finished the season. And I mentioned this on the Big Ten Huddle. My concern for Rutgers in this game is how well do they scale against a team who I think is probably a little bit better than anyone they faced this year. So remember, Rutgers, I thought has had a good season. I think they've had a good season. I don't think they've had a great season, obviously 7-5. But if you look at who they've played, and this is a talking point all preseason, I am concerned about their scalability. And I said this on the Big Ten Huddle. I'll say it again here. If you look at Sagarin, Kansas State is better than anybody they've played. Better than USC, who, despite them being 6-6, talent-wise, I think they were rated pretty highly. And again, they had a really brutal strength of schedule. Rutgers' best win is Minnesota. I think Minnesota's really good. And so I'm not sure what to make. I think Kansas State's probably a little bit better than Minnesota. I think they're a little bit better than USC, according to Sagarin. So I think Kansas State wins this game, especially if Monangai's out, because I'm concerned about their ability to run the ball without Monangai. Although, to be fair, Rutgers beat Minnesota without Monangai. So, man, I'm going to go Kansas State, despite the fact that I love Rutgers. But I think Kansas State wins this game. I think they get to 9-4, but I think it'll be close. I think if Kansas State covers, it'll be barely in this game, maybe a 7 or 10 point win. But I think Rutgers is going to have a hard time scaling to Kansas State in this game. I think Kansas State's better than people think, despite the fact that they're 8-4. I do think the Big 12, the strength of the Big 12 is how even everybody is in that conference. And I think their collective goodness is maybe a little bit better than the tiers of the Big 10. So I like Kansas State in that game. I think Avery Johnson will have a good game against I think a good but not great Rutgers team. But I would not be shocked if Rutgers pulled this one out. I could be completely misjudging the scalability issue here. Friday, December 27th, you have USC playing Texas A&M. Texas A&M is a 3.5-point favorite. If you asked me last week, and of course last week we picked this game on the Big Ten Huddle, I thought it was like Texas A&M was going to crush USC because of all the opt-outs, right? You had the Branch brothers opting out. You had Bear Alexander opting out, which you knew about. Quentin Joyner opting out. So a lot of guys opting out, a lot of guys declaring, but you've got a lot of issues on Texas A&M as well. Yeah, Nick Scourton was expected to go to the NFL draft. He does. You have a lot of other guys opting out, quarterbacks, not their starter, obviously, but a lot of their quarterbacks, a lot of their offensive linemen, a lot of defensive linemen opting out. So I am unsure what to make of this game. And I still lean Texas A&M just because I think Mike Elko is a better coach. But it is in Vegas, and so it's closer to USC. Jordan Mayo'ed, with some time to really prep with that offense, I'm going to pick Texas A&M by a field goal. Texas A&M's favored by 3.5 points. This is a 10:30 p.m. kick on Friday, December 27th. So I'm going to favor Texas A&M, but I wouldn't be surprised if USC covered. I wouldn't be surprised if USC won based on who has transferred out for Texas A&M as well. So I liked Texas A&M more before all the opt-outs came out. Saturday, December 28th, 2024, or obviously 2024. Saturday, December 28th, Boston College, Nebraska. This is a 12 p.m. kick on ABC. This is the Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl. The USC game is obviously the Las Vegas Bowl. This is the Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl. Nebraska, 3.5-point favorite. This is a game where it's not about the amount of opt-outs. It's about who is opting out. Nebraska has a ton of opt-outs. Boston College has the most important opt-out, and that's Thomas Castellanos, their quarterback who is transferring out. I have a tough time seeing how Boston College scores in this game. And I know that Tony White has moved on, really good defensive coordinator for Nebraska. But I just have a tough time figuring out how Boston College scores. I think this is a game where Dylan Raiola shows out a little bit. And I think Nebraska wins. I think they cover easily in this game. And I just don't I like Boston College, but I just think Nebraska is a better roster. And I think losing your trigger man is a big time problem. So I like Nebraska in that game. I think they get a winning record for the first time in eons, what it feels like for Nebraska. I think first time since 2016. And I think Nebraska has a lot to build on, which they are getting work done in the transfer portal. So good for them. Monday, December 30th, Iowa takes on number 19 Missouri in the Trans Perfect Music City Bowl. Missouri is a 3-point favorite in this game. I believe Luther Bolden from Missouri is out, but I believe most other people are in. Theo Weiss is still playing, I believe. And I think the biggest problem for Iowa is who is opted out. And I am concerned about that, but there is, I believe, some smoke that Brendan Sullivan will be able to play. And I'm actually going to make sure that I know that before I say it. Yes, Brendan Sullivan is the starter at quarterback for the Music City Bowl. And so that's a big deal in this game, because if he was not playing and it was going to be their third string quarterback, I would have told you, oh, it's over. Caleb Johnson's not playing in this game. Obviously a big deal. And I would have told you, oof, this is going to be rough. Brendan Sullivan playing, who I thought was their best quarterback all year. I think Iowa wins. I think they beat Missouri. Missouri's a 3-point favorite, but I think with Brendan Sullivan at the helm, I think Tim Lester was able to do some things with him that he wasn't able to do with Cade McNamara. And while Caleb Johnson is out, I do think their other running backs are good enough to make things work for the Hawkeyes. If you look at what they were able to do statistically, Moulton had averaged over 5 yards a carry. Patterson over 4 yards a carry. Sullivan, I think, had a little bit of dual threat ability. So I think while Caleb Johnson's a big loss, I think with Brendan Sullivan in the fold, I do think you're able to throw a bit better. I do think you're able to run a little bit better. And I like Iowa to shut down Missouri's offense enough. And I think they will get enough points to win. I look for like a 16-13 type of game or a 13-10 type of game. Very low scoring, very on brand for Iowa. So that's what I like for Iowa. Going back to the bowl games here, the next bowl game for the Big Ten is Alabama, Michigan. Alabama, number 11 in the country, taking on Michigan in the ReliaQuest Bowl. Alabama is a 12-point favorite in this game. And on the Big Ten Huddle, I picked Michigan. And my whole reasoning for picking Michigan is because even without Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, I thought that Michigan's defensive line might present problems for Jalen Milroe. And if you look at Jalen Milroe over the past year and a half, whenever he has to play a really strong front, he is very bad. And you saw it against Oklahoma. You saw it against Tennessee. You've seen it against other teams where it doesn't matter who he goes up against. It doesn't matter that the talent edge on the outside. If he's struggling against a defense like that, then it really brings problems for Alabama and their offense. The biggest problem here, though, is that Josiah Stewart most likely also out, and I just don't know if Michigan has the defensive depth to really make Jalen Milroe uncomfortable. And so I'm changing my pick from the Big Ten Huddle. You're losing those two guys. You're probably losing Kenneth Grant as well. I don't think that's been stated yet. But I think Alabama wins, and I wouldn't be surprised if they cover now, because I think if the defensive line is unable to challenge Jalen Milroe, I think they probably win by multiple scores. That's just the reality, unfortunately, for Michigan, is that I think with a couple of their key defensive linemen, I think they win this game. But this is really a do or die, right? Like if you're able to contain Jalen Milroe and force him into bad throws, bad decisions, I think Michigan wins. I think if they can't, I think Bama wins and wins big. So I'm going with Bama winning big. switching my pick from the Big Ten huddle because of all the opt-outs on the defensive line. Louisville, Washington. Louisville's a 2.5-point favorite. This is a Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl, 2 p.m. on CBS. I like Washington in this game, and it's for the sole reason, again, Tyler Shaw has opted out of this game, and I think that's a big loss for Louisville. And if you look at who has opted out so far for Washington, it's not many. So I haven't seen, if Denzel, like if certain guys have decided, but like a lot of their key guys are coming back, or at least it seems like they're coming back. So I like the continuity with Washington. Certainly think Louisville can do things with Jeff Brom at the helm, but I like Washington to win this game and have a winning record against end with a winning record. So Washington beats Louisville. I think it's a lot of it I think losing Tyler Shaw really, really hurts for them. And I think that's going to make it tough for them to be able to compete in this game. So I like Washington to win.
¿Hablas español?
Sprichst du Deutsch?
Kan du norsk?
If you've had that sound from Babbel before, I bet you do. Babbel is the science-backed language learning app that actually works. With quick 10-minute lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts, Babbel gets you on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. With over 16 million subscriptions sold and a 20-day money-back guarantee, just start speaking another language with Babbel. Right now, up to 55% off your Babbel subscription at babbel.com/Spotify podcast. Spelled BABBEL.com/Spotify podcast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
ABC, 3 p.m. You have number 15 South Carolina playing number 20 Illinois in the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl. South Carolina is a 9.5-point favorite, and I have a tough time picking this game because I think South Carolina, from a athletic standpoint, is probably a better team, and I think what we've seen often in games like this, where you have a team that's punched up for a while, they get to a bowl game where there's been some rest time, and all of a sudden they get not exposed, but you just see, okay, there is a talent edge. And I think you're going to see that in this game with South Carolina and Illinois. I think South Carolina will cover. I think Illinois will be competitive throughout. I think Luke Altmaier, I think that offensive line is really good. I think it really hurts them that Pat Bryant is out of this game. I believe Zachary Franklin also is opting out of this game. That really kills them because they lose the athletic edge on the outside. I do think Illinois' defense will make some plays. But at the end of the day, I think South Carolina will just be able to do a little bit more on the defensive and offensive lines. I think South Carolina's defensive line, even with a couple of opt-outs there, I do think that's going to make it tough. Kyle Kennard has declared for the NFL draft, but you still have Dylan Stewart. You have all these guys that are just nightmares to defend on the defensive line. I like South Carolina to win, I think win by 10. So I think they get a cover. I hope I'm wrong though. Last bowl game here, Friday, January 3rd, 2025. It's Minnesota at Virginia Tech. It's in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Minnesota fans, you should expect to see your coach covered in mayo. I think Minnesota wins. I think they win comfortably. Not a ton of opt-outs. Daniel Jackson not playing in this game, I believe, and you have some transfers. But other than that, I think Virginia Tech is going to really struggle in this game. I think Minnesota's secondary is going to be intact here, and I think that secondary is underrated. I think they're going to be able to really force Virginia Tech into having to pass. And I think that's going to be rough for them. I like Minnesota. I like Minnesota big in this game. And I think you're going to see a lot of mayo dumped on your coach. So that'll do it for this edition of the Christmas Eve version of the Big Ten Football Talk podcast. We'll be back breaking down the playoff games for the second round. 3 Big Ten teams, 2 games. We'll break down all the playoff games, but make sure you keep it locked in here. Thanks for listening. Again, Merry Christmas. Take care. God bless.